is Arne Slot? Is he really a good candidate for Tottenham Hotspur? Quite possibly. As someone who has watched Feyenoord enough to create a scripted 30-minute podcast for Get Football Plus, I feel pretty qualified in my opinions here. So let's talk about the problems facing the potential Spurs manager. Who even is Slot and what he would do to this Tottenham team? Coming into Spurs right now isn't as hard a job as Chelsea. In Romero, Bentancur, Kane, Kulusevski, Richarlison, Porro, there's some serious talent on the books. Romero allows you to play an aggressive high line because he's quick and he ranks high for interceptions per 90. Bentancur, meanwhile, is a dream midfielder, able to resist pressure, carry the ball forward and contribute in the final third, as well as make an impact defensively. Kulusevski, Richarlison, Porro, these are all technically strong footballers who are good in the 1v1 and good with their passing. But the issue is the squad effectively forces you to play a back three. There's currently no viable left centre back to play in a back four, and all of the fullbacks besides Emerson and Reguilon are, well, wing backs. Porro, Spence, Perisic, Udogie, Sessegnon are all more suited to a back three or have shown their best in a back three. Try to play a back four system, you're probably finding your team having to shift into wide fullbacks that play like wing backs anyway. Obviously this is just on the pitch. Off it, Spurs have some tremendous facilities that even Antonio Conte was impressed by. But with the amount of managers they've had since Pochettino left, combined with the fans having to put up with disappointment in their brand new shiny stadium, the atmosphere there right now is toxic. From at least what I've read by Tottenham fans, they seem to feel like their club right now is a circus run by the clowns. What this means is there'll be immense scrutiny on the next person to walk into the hot seat, especially if they're not a household name. So that brings us to Arne Slot. Slot is the manager of Feyenoord, a team currently top of the Eredivisie and according to 538 have a 96% chance of winning only their second title in the 21st century. It's a monumental achievement, as respectable as Ten Hag's wins in the competition with Ajax. Slot has done this with a team he took over in the middle of the 2021 season and led to the UEFA Conference League final last season. This year, his team have played in a 4-2-3-1 shape that sees the use of inverted fullbacks. Luciano Geschoide in particular often comes into midfield and showcases great passing range. One reason Feyenoord do this is to isolate their wingers in wide areas against the fullbacks, because the team could be quite crossing dependent. But it also means when they attack in transition, what they really want to do under Slot, they're able to stretch the defence immediately. Another thing that's interesting is what Slot does with his midfielders, Kokchu and Quintin Timber. Rather than operate at equidistant positions, the pivot will often drop quite wide and seemingly out of position, but what it does is create a huge central gap to be exploited. This is an oversimplification, of course. There's some variance in the way they attack, whether they're starting Santiago Jimenez, more of a target man striker, or Danilo, more of an advanced forward getting in behind. I was speaking to a couple of Feyenoord fans too, they assure me their wingers are cutting in more now. Nevertheless, the underlying statistics are worth a read. They hold 58.3% possession, taking the most shots per 90 in the Eredivisie, but not always of the highest quality, as you can see by their non-penalty expected goals per shot. But Slot's team have coped well under the pressure this season, getting big wins, especially recently against Ajax. The 44-year-old's coaching background goes back further than this too. He was the most successful coach at AZ Alkmaar by points per game. He only left because he was sacked for negotiating with Feyenoord. It's an interesting come up considering he was basically a nobody as a player. But players is where he specialises. John Koopmeiners, Owen Wijndal, Tyrell Malacia, Luis Sinisterra and Marcos Senense, these are all players that have left Slot's team much better than they were when they joined. Orkan Kocu, Gertrude and Sebastian Szymanski are the next guys to leave. His former players and teammates have described him as analytical, calm and diplomatic, but they were also sure to point out he doesn't stand for rubbish. He can be a little blunt is the feeling I've got. So with all of this said, could he work at Tottenham? The biggest barriers you can see in this system is that, well, Spurs aren't geared towards his 4-2-3-1, and worse, aren't geared towards inverting fullbacks. The most talented fullback on the book, Pedro Porro, specialises in wide areas with superb crosses and overlapping runs. Placing him inside could negate these strengths and make his expensive purchase a waste of money. But I don't think Slot just wants to use inverted fullbacks for the sake of it. I think that's to overload the midfield. So, let's say Spurs get a new left centre-back in the summer, whoever that is. Perhaps something Slot could do that might be fresh and might work is use Eric Dyer as something like what Marquinhos and John Stones are at PSG and Manchester City, a central centre-back who shifts into midfield. This way you can recreate that 2-3-5 attack and the 2-3 rest defence. It just means your wider centre backs have to be far less adventurous. This could suit Kulusevski and Son too, as Son likes to exploit gaps between defenders with runs in behind, while Kulusevski can drop deeper to turn at goal and use the space he is in. And importantly, this gets our potential wing-backs into zones they operate best in, and they effectively take the place of the wingers in the Feyenoord system, isolating the defenders and attacking. But is Slot, the person, ready for a job like Spurs? I'm not sure. It's worth saying he's contracted until 2025, and last year Feyenoord actually rejected a £5 million bid for his contract. I personally would like someone a little more prestigious like Ruben Amorim to command a bit more respect in the dressing room. But the upside of Slot could be interesting for Spurs if he lands well. Reaching the UEFA Conference League with the Dutch side is a really big achievement. But what's more monumental is winning the Eredivisie with a team not called PSV or Ajax. Please, Spurs fans, just take him seriously. Give him a chance if he does join. There's potential here for Arne Slot to become one of the top coaches in Europe.